The film is laden with the very heavy visual symbolism. For instance, you use a heavy blue kind of a sofa there, which appears throughout the film from the beginning till the end. In fact, the film begins with that and ends with that. There's a use of blue color. There is the symbolism of a blue woolen ball. And then there is this big motif of blank canvas. Mm-hmm. And these move throughout the film in an interrelated fashion, and the meaning of these symbols seem to acquire greater, increasing resonance as the film progresses.
I started with a blue sofa. That was the initial vision that started the film.
Okay. Why the color blue?
I have no idea. I wish I knew. But later on, then I put the woman in a blue dress because I wanted to show that she kind of blends into her world so much so that she disappears. And in order for her to pull herself out and define herself and come out of that sofa or out of her background, then in the end, of course, she is against a blank canvas. And just the negation of all color behind her defines her. Sometimes you don't need to really define yourself. If you just remove everything else that's in the background, you get definition automatically. And so that was the symbolism in the end. As for the blue thread, I needed a sutradhar, because it's such a surreal film with so many disjointed, little stories. I needed something to connect. And so whenever that yarn of thread kind of, we say, we spin a yarn. So whenever that yarn of thread just goes through the scenes, you feel like, okay, they're all connected, that I am spinning a yarn and it's a stream of consciousness.
The principal character of this film, this woman called Moksha, she is trying to find her own bearings by moving out of her marital relationship, and this whole struggle between her and her husband. What were you trying to say through this conflict and many other parallel conflicts between other pairs that you have put into the film?
It's a story of three couples. So the main couple is the hero and the heroine, and then they meet two other couples. The two other couples actually represent the possibilities that she can have. She can take her marriage in either, in either directions. And then she chooses something apart from all of that, she chooses a third direction. But I wanted to show through those other couples that, her marriage, if she stayed, she would go into one of those scenarios. And was she willing to do that? So that's where the other couples. See, you have to externalize an internal story and you have to show it visually and cinematically, because I wanted to exploit the language of cinema rather than just dialogue or sound. I wanted to actually show something internal in a cinematic way. For me, Mid-Science was also an exercise to know what is my style as a filmmaker.
Tell us about that. Which filmmakers have influenced your style? Do you draw inspiration from somewhere, or you're trying to define yourself in a new manner or fashion?
Of course, we're all influenced by filmmakers, and I have my favorites. Definitely the Italian filmmakers like Fellini, Pasolini, they are my major influences. And, I also like Wong Kar-wai and his expression. And I see a lot of movies like world cinema. I'm constantly watching films. However, and this is an interesting episode that happened. Just before I was shooting Nupur, I was at the Arab Film Festival, and a French filmmaker, Bourlem, he had just won the Best Director at Venice International. And he had come with his film to San Francisco, and I had the opportunity to have coffee with him. And he couldn't speak a word of English and I couldn't speak a word of French, but somehow we communicated, and I asked him for advice. Since I was just going into my first short film. And he told me that in your first few films, don't worry about anything, make all the mistakes, do all the experimentation, and find your vocabulary, your personal vocabulary, and your cinematic vocabulary. Because later on, when the budgets become bigger and there's a lot more pressure, you won't have the opportunity to do that. And once you have your vocabulary, then you can tell all the stories you want. And so I think my first two films, I've taken his advice to the T. I experimented a lot. Not everything has worked, but I have got a grip on my cinematic vocabulary. I can see, how I tell my story. What are the tools I use? I'm getting a sense of it. Yeah.
How have the audience received this film at various festivals? In particular, how have young women with artistic inclinations probably received this film? And how has been the reception in India?
We're talking about Mid-Sign, right?
Yes, Mid-Sign.
So I wasn't there for the screening of all the other film festivals because by then I had already moved to India for making my next film. But I got awards, and I got, I would get a call from the festival directors, and they would kind of give me a little bit about how the screening went and, what was the reception. I think people in the West are open to different formats of storytelling, especially the festival-going crowd. They don't go in with a preconceived notion. They know that they might be surprised by a different kind of storytelling. So I think it was received quite well in the US. In Mumbai, Uma Dikhuna, who's the curator of the World Cinema section at MAMI, she warned me. She says, be prepared for an aggressive or an adverse reaction while the film was being screened. And at the same time, Steven Soderbergh's film was being screened on another screen, and I was worried that I wouldn't have a lot of audience. But surprisingly, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 75% of this big theater was full. And my Q&A ran as long as the film. And I was very surprised that Indian audience, especially a Mumbai audience, appreciated the film. Some of the women in the audience got up and they were telling me that it was their personal journey. Like when they saw the film, they felt as though they lived the character. And for me, that was the best compliment I could have gotten because I wanted to get that. I wanted them to get that. And so I achieved the goal,
At this point, I think I should ask you, who are the women filmmakers that you admire?
Okay, I have 2 or 3 women filmmakers. One is definitely my favorite. My top is Lina Wertmuller, again, another Italian filmmaker. She used to be an assistant to Fellini, and she has made the most amazing films like Swept Away, and she was the first woman director to ever be nominated for an Oscar for Seven Beauties. I met her. I think she's like in her 90s. I met her in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Jane Campion is another favorite of mine. Lina Wertmuller, she's a German filmmaker, and I think she's dead now, but I've seen her films and I got very influenced. It was so funny because when I was learning filmmaking, all my role models initially were all men, with Kubrick and Lynch and Bergman. And then I realized that they're all male filmmakers. I don't have any female filmmakers to, model myself or to look up to or see their expression. And then I discovered Lina Wertmuller. And then from there I met, through cinema, I met a lot of other filmmakers.
Could you reveal something about the film that you're planning to shoot in Hyderabad?
Okay, so I'm making an English language film again. It is set in Hyderabad. The title of the film is The Anushri Experiments. It is a light comedy. It's a little bit more commercial than my other 2 films. Mm-hmm. It is about a young woman who thinks that she's a loser in life. She's not doing very well in college, and her parents decide to get her married. And she comes up with the most ingenious plans to sabotage their plans, and therein comes the comedy. And in the end, while she's doing these ingenious, strategizing, she has a breakthrough in her own intelligence. And that is, what I want to, again, I'm making a film for women.
This is still a kind of a Bildungsroman film. This is again a personal journey for you, making this film?
Yes, all my
films. Although in a comic mode?
Yes, all my films are personal films. I don't know how I would make something that's not personal. You spend 2, 3, the gestation period for a film is almost about 4 years.
4 years.
Talk about screenwriting, developing it, and then finally getting the financing and then putting the film out there. You'd say 3 to 4 years of your life.
Now that you have said this kind of an attitude towards filmmaking, writing the script elaborately and then working through all the details and then taking up the production and spending 3, 4, 5 years on that is not the way films are made in India.
Unfortunately.